So today's video, what we're going to be doing is stripping the frame. First thing that we need to do is obviously get the axles and all that stuff, the suspension out of there. But what I want to focus on today, we're going to remove the exhaust. It's just one hanger. We're going to get the gas tank down. We're going to remove all the plumbing, the fuel lines, everything going to the gas tank. There's also some wiring that goes back to the taillights. We're going to remove that. We're going to remove the rear axle. And then we're going to also remove the leaf hangers, the leaf springs, all that stuff. And then we'll kind of work our way up to the front. I'll bring you guys along as much as I can. Some of the stuff just regular deconstruction. Just take things apart so you can figure out what needs to be removed. Once we get all the gear off of the frame, then we'll drop it down on the ground. And we'll just find out exactly what we need to do. We'll get our frame table built. We're just going to build a big square table that the frame has something to sit on so that we can build off of there. Today's little lesson, I wanted to kind of show you guys how suspension systems work, and especially when we're going to be doing a body drop and we're going to be making a custom frame. I wanted to kind of go over some of the things that there may be some confusion on how suspension systems work. So in a conventional leaf system, which is what this is here, this is basically a big torsion bar. So this torsion bar, it flexes and comes up and down, but when it does that, it also pivots. So when you have a load, on the truck, the frame comes down and there's more pressure on this leaf spring, but in return it causes this to kind of tilt back. This right here, the front part, is only the pivoting point. So when we actually take this and build a new frame, we're going to be cutting all of this off and building a new frame, and we're going to put a 4-link on the inside, so there'll be a similar to this, but it'll be a bar that comes down, connects to the top of the axle, or we'll have tabs that we weld on right here. They'll look similar to how this shock is set up. So we'll have basically brackets on the top that weld to the top of the 4-link, and then there will be another one on the bottom that comes and welds to the bottom, kind of like where the shock is set up. And what it does is it allows the axle to flex, come up and down, but it doesn't allow it to articulate back. And that's kind of what a 4-link does. But then you also have to have kind of a panhard bar that goes from the frame to the axle. When we start building this and grafting it, I just wanted you guys to get kind of an idea of how it works. So I'm going to take you down the frame a little bit. If you notice here, it's about 5 inches right here, and right here it's about 7 inches. So when we do our body drop, what we're going to have is a 4-inch rectangular tube that goes straight across, and it's going to give us about 3 inches of frame clearance. Now there's a couple ways to do this. On a conventional body drop or a traditional body drop, the way it works is you raise the floor up in the cab of the truck. So you raise the floor up. Technically what happens is now you have this big hump inside the truck, which we don't want to do that. We want what's called a frame body drop, or not a non-traditional body drop, where we build a custom frame. So I've kind of drew it out a little bit so it makes a little bit more sense. But I want to show you a little bit here on the front end too, what we're going to be doing down here. So on the front, you have your 2 control arms that come and lock into the spindle. When we lower it, we're basically taking these control arms and bringing them up, which gives us negative camber. Now a lot of mini truckers, what they'll do is they'll just take and cut the coil right here, which will allow these axles, or not the axles, but the control arms to come up. But then you have the problem with this wheel being tilted back, which gives you the negative camber. The way you combat that is you get an aftermarket control arm for the upper, which kind of kicks your spindle out this way a little bit. And then on the bottom you get a lower control arm, an aftermarket lower control arm, which kind of kicks the bottom of the spindle in that way, so that when you're actually on ride height, instead of your control arms being here, they're more like here, more of a center of gravity type thing. So they have an opportunity to come up, which allows your wheel to, instead of having negative camber, it's more centered for a lower riding stance. But we're going to be taking all of this off. Now we're going to be doing aftermarket control arms up front, aftermarket control arms down here, drop spindles, plus airbags inside there where the actual springs are. So that's kind of what we're going to do to remedy the front end. And then from here back, come back over here, what we're going to do is we're going to cut the frame. I'll probably have to do some measurements. It might be right here because this looks like a standard location on both places, and then we'll just cut on and weld different frame horns that are actually going to hold on to the front of the truck. So this is where the front of the cab meets, the middle of the cab, and then the bed mounts right here. So I think what we're going to actually do is we're going to cut the frame right on this seam, and then we're going to section the frame and come straight back with this. We may change that a little bit. We may come in the front of this this body bracket mount, but I'm not sure. It might come here. I'm going to do some more measurements. But basically from here back, at least from here back, will all be new. Now if you look, this is what's called a C-channel, which allows the frame to actually flex. From factory, when they designed these frames, they wanted them to flex and give when you're going over bumps and curbs and things like that, because they didn't have air suspension that would give and adjust. But when we actually build this custom frame, this frame will be a lot smaller. It'll only be about 4 inches high versus it being 7. So from here back, it's going to be all new, and it'll be fully boxed frame. We won't have this C-section, or not C-section, but a C-channel frame. It'll be a fully boxed in frame from here all the way to the back. And then the very back, come back here a bit. In the very back, we'll do what's called a C-section. Any truckers know what that is. But we're going to build our own C-section, and it's going to come from about here on a 45. It'll shoot straight back, and then it'll drop back down another 45. And then we'll build upper structure so that we can actually mount the bags right above the axle. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do airbags in the rear. In the front, you don't really have a lot of options, but in the rear, you do. A lot of people will do what's called a cantilever. I think that's what they call it, where it actually rests right here, and then it's kind of like a wedge effect. But the way you get the best ride is to do bags right over axle, not axle. Right over axle. So you want to bring your C-notch up high enough that you can get your bag here, and it's right directly above the axle, which is going to give you the best ride, and that's what we're going to go for. So I kind of drew something out to maybe help explain it. Now this is something that we're going to be building that we can actually put this truck on, and it's going to be a whole square frame that we can bolt the front end to, the cab, and the rear end. And then what I'm going to do is, this will be in another video that we share with you guys when we get it. Then I'm going to actually take front wheel drive hubs like this. I just get off of eBay, and I'm going to weld them to a plate right here, and this plate will be adjustable. This plate will be adjustable so that I can pin it to go here or here, and there'll be 8 inches of travel between each location, front and back. So I'm going to use front wheel drive hubs in the front and in the back and on both sides. That will be adjustable so that we can raise it up so the whole body itself will be mounted to this frame. This is just a temporary frame, but it'll still be adjustable so we can move it in and out of the shop. We'll have this, we'll build this while we are putting together this frame for this, because this is going to take us a while to build. Obviously there's a lot of work when you do a frame off restoration. But I just want to give you kind of a brief rundown of how it actually works, what we're going to have to do to modify it to make it kind of more obtainable and get this all built in. Now these frame horns, if you notice, right here where the cab mounts, this is the cab and this is where the truck bed mounts. And you'll see that they're in different locations. These are all things that you have to consider when you're building your new frame, because where this one rests and where this one rests are in different locations. So when we build our custom frame, we're going to have to mark this out. Let me show you what, let me grab a little pin. When we build our frame table, we're going to have a frame table come straight on the ground. We'll have a rod that comes up through here that's welded to the frame table, and we'll actually be able to see right where the body used to be. And then what we'll do is when we build our new frame, we'll be able to bring it down and just mark it. Well, you'll learn all that once we actually go through the whole process. But I think what I'm going to do tonight is, I noticed that there's just this dirt's just falling off. So I think probably the best thing for me to do tonight is just get this frame pressure washed so that I can come back and do it with a lot less dirt and everything in my face. And we'll drop the gas tank. We'll cut out this exhaust pipe. We will also remove this cross beam that mounts to the transmission. We'll remove the drive line, the rear shocks, anything that we can unbolt. We'll take all that off first. Well, anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I know that was a long introduction, but I just wanted to add, before we take everything apart, I wanted you guys to have kind of a brief rundown of how the whole system works, how the suspension moves up and down, what we're going to actually have to do to make our custom frame. And anyway, so we'll go ahead and get started. So I have the axle all disconnected, and basically what I've done is I jacked up the frame so that it's pretty much airborne, and then there's a bolt here, 21 millimeter. There's two bolts right here, 21 millimeter, but you only need to remove this one. This one you don't need to really worry about. I removed the brake lines and the emergency brake cable, and I believe that's it. Oh, and the shocks. So here's one of the shocks that bolts to there, and then the other shock top bolts there to there. Now, once I get a couple helpers in here, then all I'll have to do is just pull the pins and then push the axle out. So that's going to do it for tonight's video. As you can see, what we did here, we basically removed the gas tank, the exhaust pipe, the brake lines, the electrical lines that go to the tail lights, and the reverse lights. Pulled the axle, leaf spring, all came out as one piece. Not too hard. As you can see, I did it myself. Took me probably maybe an hour to pull off the axle. And just make sure you jack it up high enough to where it's just barely off the ground. Then from there, when you release the tension on the leaf springs, it'll drop down whatever pressure you have left. Please rate, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you guys next week. Please stay tuned. Next week we'll go through and get the front end and get all the control arms removed. That'll be on next week's video. So we'll see you then.